Committee on Ordinance and Legislation will now come to order. Madam Clerk?
Council Kadim,
Here.
Council Dion,
Here.
Council Lee,
Here.
Council Pereira,
Here.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such readings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Item 1 is citizen input, and we have one submission. Good afternoon, members of the City Council Committee on Ordinance and Legislation. I wish to divulge on an issue that has been facing our city for multiple decades. We need to fix the posting and appointments of boards and community within our community. If you take a look at Lowell's website, New Bedford's website, and many websites of municipalities across our Commonwealth, all of their websites have the vacancies listed for boards and commissions, how they can apply, and they will be granted a hearing. In Fall River, we have a charter requirement for the posting of vacant boards and commissions and how to apply. Section 3.3 of the city charter states in relevant part, the mayor shall annually post on the city's website in February a list of all vacancies on multiple member bodies. Such listings shall include guidance on applying to serve on a multiple member body. Fall River does not post its board or commission vacancies on its city website and never has. For many years, appointments are made privately if you get a phone call by the mayor, or if you donated to said mayor's campaign fund, or if you know somebody. It's the good old boy network that spoils the system. The council as a collective body needs to work with the mayor and the administration to follow the charter and to make it easier for individuals who want to serve on boards and commissions to do so. We owe our city residents a transparent and open government. Let's work to achieve that. Thank you very much for your time. Respectfully, Colin Dias. That was the only submission, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Item 2 is minutes from November 30th, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Adopt.
Second.
Motion approved made by Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Roll call vote.
Council Kadim,
Yes.
Council Dion,
Yes.
Council Lee,
Yes.
Council Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 3 is a proposed ordinance, traffic and handicap parking, which was referred January 19th. And this is to install handicap parking spots.
Motion.
You have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved made by Councilors Pereira, seconded by Councilor Dion. Madam Clerk, do we do a,
Preamble.
I was just going to say, would that be a motion for an emergency preamble?
Yes.
yes,
Second.
On the motion for an emergency preamble, Council Kadim,
Yes.
Council Dion,
Yes.
Council Lee,
Yes.
Council Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4 is a proposed ordinance from traffic.
If I may, excuse
Oh,
me,
sorry. Yeah.
would you like to make a motion to pass this through all readings with an emergency preamble?
I would make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Madam Clerk?
Okay, on passage through all readings with an emergency preamble, Council Kadim,
Yes.
Council Dion,
Yes.
Council Lee,
Yes.
Council Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 4 is proposed ordinance, traffic and miscellaneous, referred December 1st, 2020 and January 19th, 21. And there was several amendments to traffic for 30-minute parking and prohibited parking.
So moved.
Motion approved.
I have a question.
Motion approved made by Councilor Kadim. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Lee. Discussion. Councilor Pereira?
Laura, on these, there's one on Pleasant Street North, starting at a point of 129 feet east of Rowcliffe Street for a distance of 35 feet. What is that for?
That's a time sign from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Is it to assist a business there on the?
Yes. Oh, yes. Anytime signs, it's for a business.
Okay, because I didn't realize that there was one there. Okay, with that I yield. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
So this miscellaneous traffic would be to pass through first reading. Counselor Kadim,
Yes.
Counselor Dion,
yes,
Counselor Lee,
Yes.
Counselor Pereira,
yes,
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 5 is a proposed ordinance to establish position and salary of an EMS administrative assistant referred December 15th, 2020. Dear honorable council members, the Emergency Medical Services Department is asking to add the position of EMT Administrative Assistant 11A to the City Ordinance Chapter 50 Personnel. This new clerical position will provide accounting functions, including those of entering data into the processing system, and to be responsible for ensuring that all his/her work conforms to City of Fall River and Commonwealth of Massachusetts codes and standard. Attached is the recommended pay scale and the request from the Director of EMS. Choice.
make a motion to adopt,
Motion to adopt made by Councillor Pereira. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Lee. Any discussion? Councillor Dion?
yeah, I just want to make a point because I know that people are under the impression that this position increases the budget or requires a budgetary change to be approved by the city council, when in fact it doesn't. That EMS is the entity who actually will be absorbing the salary because they have the enterprise account and they will be funding the position themselves. So I just want to make a point of that so people are just aware of that. With that, I yield.
Councillor Lee?
Just to add to Councilor Dion, that would include benefits, correct?
Yes,
Thank you. I yield.
and this position is going to be posted as well.
Anything further?
Council Kadim.
Councillor Kadim?
Thank you. So I guess while I appreciate Council Dion's statements, it still is a new position. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes,
That is affirmative, yes. It is a new position.
Okay. You know, and I understand that it's being funded by the enterprise fund, but obviously, I mean, for a while there, enterprise funds were getting some type of help from the city. And I know in particular, not EMS, but when we have the sanitation funds, you know, we've got water and sewer that we're also constantly looking at, you know, with rates and stuff like that. So if they're not sustainable, you know, we're going to have to pick them up. We don't lose those individuals. We would still have to absorb it somehow on the city side or lay people off it. That's all that I just want to make sure that we're clear with. So can we just talk about, so is there any administrative assistant right now currently that you folks have over at the EMS, on the EMS side, or is all the administrative assistants on the fire side?
It's all on the fire side right now.
Okay. So you would have somebody that would be just dedicated, similar to what you have for your administrative assistant.
That's affirmative. Yep.
Now, is that when I was reading the letter, I noticed that there were no steps. Is that consistent with what we have with the administrative assistants over on the fire side? Are there no steps?
There are no steps. It's just like on our side. So whenever this person will be absorbed into the EMS union. So whatever raises they get, this person will also get with no steps.
Okay. All right. So they're not going to be in the clerical union. It's going to be the EMS union. Is that what we're doing?
That's affirmative, because some of their duties are going to require them to be in the union because they're going to have to, as Director Oliveira can explain, be privy to a lot of privileged information. And they're also going to have to take part in some discussions, interviews, investigations. So it's necessary that they be part of the EMS union.
Mm-hmm. Now, just in terms of comparison for the administrative assistant on the fire side, salary wise, is it similar?
No, it's not close to the fire side.
much lower.
It's much lower? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Can you just explain some of the duties? I know you touched on it a little bit. So you're going to do a lot of clerical. Is it filing some of the reports and things of that nature?
Right. If I can maybe simplify it a little bit. Council, you know that over the years, EMS has expanded. At one time, we had 2 medical rescues. Now we are running 7. And one of those is also a non-impact truck. So this person's duties will also be to schedule the non-impact truck, putting it in service, staffing it, keeping track of the monetary billing, taking care of that also. But in addition to us expanding in that manner, EMS has expanded astronomically because you know that there are new duties. With this whole COVID thing, you know, we're running a test site. We're running vaccine with the health department. And again, this non-impact transport is a new thing for us. So a lot of these duties, what can be taken over by this new administrative assistant.
Okay.
I don't know if that clarifies much for you, Counselor.
Yeah, that works. I was just curious to see what exactly they were going to be, what, job description duties they would be fulfilling. That's all.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yield, Counselor.
I yield.
Chief, there is this is from December, so I just want to know if it's been updated since then. But there is a job description,
Yeah.
a 2-page job description in our packet from December. Is this still accurate?
It's pretty much,
It's pretty much the same what you see there.
Okay.
it just says the samples are given, illustrative only and, comprise a set of common tasks. And obviously there'll be, as this position progresses and the department progresses, there'll be new duties added as we move along. So I didn't want to just say that the job description is A, B, C. I'd like to leave it give a little leeway. So as more jobs come up, we can add duties to the position.
It's basically open-ended, so other duties can be added.
It doesn't tie our hands with the union, we can add duties and without having any union issues.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Council Kadim?
Just, can you explain what the 1CD10 certification is?
That ICD-10 is the medical billing certification. They need to bill out ambulance calls.
Okay. So that's ICD. Okay.
ICD, yes.
Okay.
It does look like a one.
It does look like one. I might have typed the one there.
So it's okay. Thank you. I
Oh,
yield.
on one it says 1 and on the other one it says I.
Yeah, it's an ICD-10. It's a certification for the billing clerks they have to maintain so they can fill out Medicare and Blue Cross and stuff for the ambulance rides.
Anything further? Madam Clerk?
On the motion from Council Pereira, which was seconded by Council Lee, you would want to put this through first reading, I would think.
Yes.
Okay, on the motion, Council Kadim,
Yes.
Council Dion,
Yes.
Council Lee,
Yes.
Council Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6 is a proposed ordinance amending structures on or over public ways. It was referred to committee January 19th, 21.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Attached proposed amendment to chapter 66 of the code of the city of Fall River as it relates to streets, sidewalks, and other public places for your consideration. Do you have any questions? Motion approved by Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Lee. Any discussion?
I do.
Councilor Pereira?
Mary, could you go into this a little bit further as far as when people are going to be applying for structures over public ways and how they apply all at the same time and not different times?
Certainly. We have Mr. Kenny with us this evening, the city planner. This particular issue might be better described by Mr. Kenny.
Okay.
Might be better described by Mr. Kenny if you knew anything about it. I was not here when this originated, and I have not studied it, and I have not reviewed it, so I'd be happy to do so, but I can't give you any helpful information tonight, sorry.
Okay, so Councilor Pereira, between Mr. Kenny and myself, we will get back to you with some further information with regard to this particular item that has been referred to ordinance.
Is Mr. Rumsey available? Was he not available?
He's coming for item 9, I believe.
Can we hold this and come back to it?
Yeah, you want to table it?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to table.
But
Oh, I'm sorry.
you may not want to table it. You want to continue discussing it tonight?
I
How
would,
about,
want-
make a motion to take it out of order?
You could do that, take the next thing out of order.
So we can just leave this as is, Madam Clerk? I don't want it to go anywhere.
Yeah, but if you table it, it would be tabled for the evening. I don't think that's your intent, right?
Oh.
No.
No.
So my suggestion would be to take number 7 out of order. I think that would still be on the table without a motion.
I would make the motion to take number 7 out of order.
I'll make that motion since it's my resolution.
Before we do that, can I just, Madam Chairman?
Councilor
Yeah.
Kadim?
Just in terms of this does refer to fees. So I just got a question for Ms. Sahadi. With regards to the fee schedule that's in the city code, I haven't seen it come before us for updates. Is there any plans to review the fees that are in the code just to make sure that they're consistent with what we want them to be, and if any amendments need to?
Yeah, certainly, Council Kadim. So we have been working with various departments to update the code for fees. I know the traffic fees have come to you separate by Mrs. Ferrera, but in particular, the code fees out of building.
Right.
Mr. Hathaway and his staff have done significant work, and I think I actually forwarded the packet to you at one point, or to all of you. It was pretty thick, and it compared a lot of communities and a lot of different fees, whether they be building fees or other fees. And so that project is still ongoing. I'm not quite sure, or I can't give you an estimated date as to when you'll see that, because it's pretty extensive at this point.
Could we, I guess, could we target to see when we're building the budget for FY22, maybe just give us some recommendation on fees, and maybe that's when we can tackle it as a council and get it submitted to ordinance just for review, because I think that's part of, obviously some additional revenues that we can be looking at to see where we stand with some of the services that we're providing as opposed to taxes.
Yeah, and quite frankly, if you look at the comparisons that Mr. Hathaway did with surrounding communities, ours are significantly low in a lot of areas.
Okay. All right, thank you. I yield.
Madam Clerk, would you just take the next item out of order? Leave this as is?
What is your intent? Do you wish to table it for more information later, or no, or?
Well, someone, I assume Corporation Counsel is the one that sent in this proposed change?
No, if you look at the page behind the mayor's letter, there is a letter from the city clerk with the
Yeah.
requested changes.
So the city clerk?
The fee for the permits will not be affected. You see the letter
Yes.
behind the mayor's letter?
Mhm. So who, Madam Clerk, who did the work on the changes to the ordinance? The mayor sent the
The-
letter, but where did this come from?
The city clerk worked with the administration. According to her letter, the administration had meetings with respective department heads to make the amendments for the process for violations of said section, and also establishes an annual licensing period. Currently, many of these permits are not annual permits. They are like, you pay one time, so they're looking to make them annually. They're not increasing the fees as it states in the city clerk's letter. The fees are not affected. They're just trying to update and streamline the process.
Do you know which department heads were in this meeting?
I do not know. I was not one, but I believe this came as a result of some of the people for outdoor dining for COVID to establish seating on sidewalks and that. Some of our permits were probably outdated that would not be current with some of the situations. I think as the parklet that they had put downtown and some of these other items. I wasn't part of the meeting, so I can't say specifically, but I believe this came as some of those meetings. with
I understand, but
probably,
normally we would have somebody from the administration explaining, an overall summary of this.
I apologize, Counselor. Attorney Rumsley has joined us. I'm not sure if he is familiar with this particular item as well. If not, we will have to get back to you. Attorney Rumsley, are you familiar at all with item 6 on the agenda? Lost him. I apologize. I was not in these meetings, so I'm not familiar with item 6.
Madam Chairwoman, just while while Corporation Counsel is just kind of getting brought up to speed. So, everything looks pretty straightforward. I guess the only question that I would have is just the licensing period itself. So it states a permit issued under the provision of the article shall be valid for 1 year. So we have, we have individuals who come over for banners just for, maybe a week or 2 weeks. So let's just take Day of Portugal, because I know that's one that goes over South Main Street just to kind of advertise that whole Day of Portugal festivities that take place. So if it's good for a year, are we placing, so will the application still require individuals to say how long they want to have the banner over the public way? Or if I'm with the Day of Portugal and I submit for a permit, do I get to have that banner stay over South Main Street for the entire year? Because I think that's how I read item C. A permit issued under the provisions of this article shall be valid for 1 year from the date of issue.
Are you asking me, Councilor Kadim?
No, I think I was just asking somebody. I don't know. I mean, I didn't draft the ordinance.
Were you not in the meeting either?
I was not. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not sure if Attorney Rumsley can hear us yet.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So item 6, were you involved in redrafting item 6 on the agenda this evening?
I thought,
Just for the bond aspect of it, or I'm not actually sure. I didn't prepare for number 6 at all. But I know I've dealt with something on that. I mean, what specific is the issue?
I think the only change really is, and I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I think that the main change really is the licensing period, right? So you're going to have an annual licensing period. And, based on the letter, it seemed like I thought we were looking to establish, and maybe that's not the intent, but I thought we were almost trying to establish a licensing period similar to the liquor licenses, right? So you would have your renewals in December. So I don't know if that was in the intent. Everybody that wants a banner over a public way or a structure over a public way would require to submit their interest January, June, July, whatever the case may be. But then it just, when you look at item number C, it just says the licensing period, a permit issued under the provision of this article shall be valid for 1 year from the date of issue. So that would suggest to me from the date of issue that you're not really having a true, licensing period. I guess the licensing period would be for an entire year, regardless of when they submit, whether it's May, June, July, or August.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm going to answer your question properly. I know I looked at it because if I remember, I don't have it in front of me, but if I remember correctly, the way it was written, you would need to renew before January 1st. But it was always a January 1 to January 1 renewal. So it didn't make any sense to me that we would have this expiration date. So if you got your license December 31st, in anticipation it was going to expire January 1st, technically you would have already expired. So it wasn't written properly. So I know I had some input, let's make it annual from whatever day that you renew it. But that was the extent of that conversation, but I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I think I know.
It does. I guess it does and it doesn't. I guess I'm still trying to figure out what the overall intent was. Is the intent to have everybody come and apply for these permits at the same time? Or is it to have these permits good for a certain period of time? I guess that's what I would want to know first of all.
Well, that was kind of my question too, because the way it was written, it had to be done from a January 1 to January 1, period. And I was asking if there was a purpose behind that, because, you know, if you were proactive and you did it properly, you would, you would make sure it's renewed sometime in December, correct? But by the way it was written, it would expire the new year. So it didn't make any sense the way it was written. So my intent was simply, either we should have it January 1 to January 1, or is there any reason why we can't do it to, 1 year from the date you issue it? And I didn't know whether anybody cared, whether it was a money issue, whether it was a send the notice out issue. I was told that it had something to do with sending the notices out, like they just have on their calendar, send all the reminder notices somewhere around December 31st or January 1st. And then the question was simply, logistically, does that make sense, or does it make sense just to give them a full year from whenever they apply?
That's what I was under the impression.
Okay. I yield. I'm sorry. I had to plug in my computer before it died, and I lost all that knowledge.
Yield, Counselor, or do you want him to repeat it?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Counselor Pereira?
That's what my, my feeling for this, and when I had tried to get some clarification on it, was that so many of our licenses come in and the due date ends up being on January 1st around the holidays. And if you had to have it for liquor licenses or any kind of license, that historically seems to be the day that the end of the year that everybody's coming in for renewals. And it's a busy time of year for a lot of people. And they were looking at trying to change it to do it from the date that you issued, that a year from that date, you would have to come in and renew. But to read it the way it's written, it doesn't clearly state that in the ordinance. So I think that there's some confusion about it. So I would honestly, I know that we didn't want to table it because we wouldn't be able to hear it again today. But I would think tabling it and getting some more information on it and letting Attorney Rumsey look over this, because clearly he didn't have a whole lot of knowledge on this particular item that came in from the clerk. Maybe they need to figure it out and then come back to us with it. So I would make a motion to table.
Counselor Pereira, can you hold off on that motion? There are some other people that want to speak.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, and can I just ask you, Counselor Pereira, when you said you were trying to get clarification on it, who did you talk to? I'm just trying to figure out.
I had spoken to the mayor's office about it. What is this exactly for? And it was told to me that you had a lot of people coming in at the same time to renew licenses, that it should be by the year, when they came in and they applied, then every year that would be their application period. Having owned a restaurant myself, I know that, to go in and get all of the licenses that you need, it's always around the holidays at the end of the calendar year in December. And, at City Hall, a lot of the staff that's working, if they have vacation time that they haven't taken, usually they want to take it then. It seems that things get backed up. People aren't getting notified, this year we haven't, but a lot of the businesses in that have different parties or whatever in their establishments, sometimes it just gets over your head, and then you have people working and not having the proper license. I thought we were trying to tweak that. And the other thing, are we looking at this too for people who want to have outdoor dining? We really should be pushing that now so that by March, April, we have it figured out on outdoor dining and being over a public way, like one of them on the bottom of Purchase Street. It seems that there was a number of people there. Mrs. Ferrera was there, the building department was there, licensing was there. Sometimes I get a little bit frustrated because I feel when something new is going to be done in Fall River, we think of 10 reasons why it can't be done, rather than say, well, this is what we can do to make sure it's done. We all know that a lot of restaurants, bars, and things like that, they've suffered through COVID. So we want to be able to come up with something with this item so that, they can have, they can utilize sidewalk and streets in an appropriate manner. How can we get it done for them? And what kind of a license would they need? And maybe that's part of it. I just think it needs to be tweaked a little bit more. That's just my thought. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Dion?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One would be, some of these permits are strictly for very specific events that might only be a 2-day or a week-long event. Is that correct?
I'm not sure who you're asking, Counselor.
Anybody who has the answer.
Oh, I don't- So,
Allison Bouchard is on. She just got on. Perhaps Allison could explain it. Michelle, Council Dion?
Because go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yes, some point last year, I want to say it may have been late summer. A couple of department heads met, and it was a result of the outdoor dining that brought this all together. And I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, but I hadn't received an invitation, so I wasn't prepared to be here. I didn't know you needed me here, but anyway.
We always-
So as a result of that, there was some portions of the application that needed to be changed because certain parties were not included, such as the police department. They weren't included in the application process, and they asked to be, just so that they could have a seat at the table in case there were issues with any public safety access to the sidewalk or to the area. Laura was invited as the parking clerk because, as we know, the last year, there were tables that were placed in the street area. So she had to be involved as well. But this is mostly so that we can have some sort of licensing period to allow my office to send out an annual notice. I guess to know that these people are interested in keeping this license on an annual basis. To Councilor Kadim's question, I guess the intent is not for a banner to be up for a year. We didn't change the application to show, to eliminate the dates. Maybe there should be better language to address that part of it, the date, because they do still pay on those individuals do still pay the $15 fee on an annual basis as they request it. This was more geared towards those outdoor dining that will occur on an annual basis. And we also have language in there now so that if they do place their tables, chairs, and or the heaters, and they don't remove them in a timely manner when they are supposed to, there is something in place to allow for that to be addressed by a non-criminal citation or just, a warning to remove items from the sidewalk.
So I guess that leads to what was going to be my second question, which you kind of answered. And my question was going to be where it's an annual license that operates within the confine of the dates set forth on the
No
applications.
idea. You should know that about these.
It would,
meetings.
yes, it's going to be,
No idea.
so to Corporation Counsel's point, I had an annual licensing period running from January 1 to December 1. So I guess it made more sense that the licensing period is from the date of issue, that your license would expire a year from the date of issue. Again, that doesn't address those seasonal things such as banners. So perhaps we could put some language in there to address that.
All right, with that I yield. Thank you.
Counselor Lee?
So my question, I thought we were going to go into tabling, and it looks like we're able to finally have some extra information. So I don't think we're leaning towards tabling anymore. However, I had a question for Mary on this. We talk about how these renewals will be coming at different times of the year. How does that look for you when you're trying to budget? Is it significant at all? Are there more chances for errors, or would it be more of a safer bet to have them on a uniform day or a uniform time period for budgeting purposes and to make sure the collection is properly done?
Well, certainly when anything's annual, we can certainly determine a little bit easier as to what the expected revenue is going to be. But these particular licenses, as Allison pointed out, come out of her office. And so as long as she's got a proper database, not everybody renews some of these licenses every year. So, when we're talking about the banners, those aren't necessarily renewed annually. Yes, there are some groups that always put up banners, but others, it's sporadic depending on their event. With regard to the heaters and the outdoor dining, that too was very active this past year, but going forward, it may not be. So Allison in her office will be keeping track of those individuals and will be budgeting it appropriately in her city clerk revenue.
And I think we, we had questions. I'm pretty sure if this was presented to the 9, there would be more questions. So I think in this situation, we just didn't know who to ask those questions to. The letter that we have is the description of some department heads and things like that. I think we have to get more detail as to who was involved in the making or the decision making of these ordinance changes. So that way we know who to ask these questions to. I think at least for about a 10-minute period here, we really didn't know where we were going with that. So I think in the future when these things come down the line, and again, I don't want to get into a big wax poetic about not having a city administrator to kind of help organize all that, but I know that it's stuff like this that happens that, it kind of comes down the line. Fortunately, Allison jumped in at the right time, but some of the things that come down the line, we want to make sure that the details are a little more descriptive, and we can use many examples such as, easements and all kinds of different kind of conversations we've had over the years about sneaking things by. And I don't think this is that, but we definitely want to be more descriptive in who we can ask these questions to. So, and with that, I yield.
Councilor Kadim?
Thank you. So I guess, does it make sense, because just hearing the clerk talk about what I guess the intent was, would it make more sense for us to actually revisit the ordinance and actually separate banners versus structures, outdoor dining, things of that nature? Because I think that might make more sense to have an ordinance that's, very specific to outdoor dining and things of that nature, where, that would be on an annual basis. You want to make sure that everybody's still filing for that and it's being removed in timely fashion versus, the banners that might be coming up only for, a 2-week period or a week period. I think now might make the most sense to kind of break that down. Does that make more sense for us to do it that way?
Yes, I agree.
I would think so as well.
Okay. So I'd make a motion then, Madam Chairwoman, to refer this to Corporation Counsel and have him work with the department heads to just revisit this ordinance and actually just break out what we're actually looking to do. So eliminate the banners and have just a separate ordinance that would pertain to the banners, and then all these other structures, meaning the outdoor dining, that we address it that way.
Second that motion.
The motion made by Councilor Kadim to send to Corporation Counsel, seconded by Councilor Dion. Any discussion? Councilor Pard, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did have my hand up. And I agree with some of what Councilor Kadim said. And maybe we don't have to table it. We can refer it, which is fine, but clearly it's not at a point for us to take a vote on it. One of the concerns that I have, or one of the things that I would wish Corporation Counsel would look at, if you're talking about outdoor dining, I think in that ordinance, you need to say outdoor dining in Fall River will be from this month to this month, whether you say, we're going to start outdoor dining on, Columbus Day, and it's going to run, until, I don't know, Memorial Day or whatever, that needs to be in there as well. We need to have timelines on that of when outdoor dining will be available. And I would hope that Corporation Counsel can get this ordinance back to us quickly, because there are many people who want to start doing the outdoor dining, by March, April. And, that will help some of the businesses. I yield. I think Councilor Attorney Rumsey has something. I yield.
Chairwoman, can I just clarify my motion would be to refer it to Corporation Counsel for him to work, and then when it's ready, refer it back to Ordinance Committee so we can take it up.
So we need to refer it and table it, because we did not table at the last meeting, and the items that we sent to Corporation Counsel now have to go back to full council. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Right. We could forward a letter to Corporation Counsel asking him to make the updates that you were suggesting and table the matter here in committee, so that when he has his recommendations ready, he could just forward them straight to the committee. and not have to be referred back to the full council.
Can I just get clarification? Why would we have to table if we just refer it to Corporation Council when it, I mean, because we haven't taken any action to have it leave committee yet. So I would think it would still be in committee.
That's what I
No,
thought.
if you refer it to Corporation Council, it would be referred out of the committee. The full council would then vote to send it to Corporation Council. The committee would no longer have it.
So as a subcommittee, we can't refer as an ordinance committee, refer ordinances for him to write and draft some stuff and get it back to us before we get it. Because I feel like that's our responsibility as a committee. Refer things to Corporation Council for him to draft, review, and then bring it back to the committee itself so we can review it. I would still say that our work's not done until we make a motion to either grant leave to withdraw or refer it to full committee. That's just, I know it's probably just a technicality, but I guess.
agree with you, Counselor. I had this discussion with Madam Clerk and Council President about the last items that we sent. And I don't know if it's just in the matter of wording. Madam Clerk, if you send it to him in a letter rather than referring it to him. The letter
Since the
keeps it-
city clerk is available, I would defer to her. We had the conversation the other day as to the proper procedure. Usually when the matter is referred, the full council takes a vote. It's out of the purview of the committee. So previously, we would usually send a request to Corporation Council and table the matter in committee, but the city
Okay.
clerk is available for.
Yeah, so I'm not trying to make a big deal on it, but I think if that's the way, then I think we need to kind of reestablish our rules, because especially for ordinance committee, because there's going to be, I can't imagine, especially when we're dealing with ordinances, that the committee would not be sending a good majority of the work back to Corporation Council, either for review or drafting. That it would still need to come back to us in order for us to really truly meet our fulfillment and our obligation as a subcommittee to get it back to the full committee. So, again, so if it's a motion to table, then I want to amend my motion to refer to Corporation Council and table in committee.
Madam Clerk, would it be a motion to send a letter to Corporation Council and table?
We could forward a letter to Corporation Council asking for his input, review, and changing a draft to bring it back to the committee, and the matter could be tabled in the committee so that you still have it. But as I said, the city clerk is available.
No, that's my motion. We don't
Yes.
take issue out of it.
Do you have a second?
Second on what? What's
Second.
the second on?
Motion.
I would
letter,
make a
motion.
motion to send it to Corporation Council and table it in committee so it can come back to us.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Dion. Madam Clerk?
So
I'm
the
sorry, is there
motion-
any further discussion? Attorney Rumsey?
I just had one question. One of the councils was suggesting there would be a certain time frame for outdoor dining. I'm just curious if that's what the intent of the committee wants. I mean, whatever you guys want, I can draw up, but I'm just curious as to why, considering it could be, if we have unseasonably warm weather right about the deadline, would you really want to prevent somebody from staying open? And, maybe somebody will get creative like 19 Prime with quite a bit of space on the sidewalk, and maybe they want to install one of those bubble tables, that's protected from the weather. I'm just curious if we definitely want to have a deadline or not.
Was that Councilor Pereira that had asked that?
I did. I mean, I just think, I've been let me tell you, Attorney Rumsey, I put this resolution in 4 years ago to get outdoor dining. I mean, because I really felt it brings ambiance to a community, it would help businesses, et cetera. And that never went anywhere. With the pandemic coming, all of a sudden we started talking more about outdoor dining, and there were several establishments that had it. I don't have an issue if you want to do it for the year, but I don't know that many locations would have the space to be able to get bubbles or things like that. That would be up to the council. If you want to not have a time on it and people can have outdoor dining all the time, I don't know what somebody like Mrs. Ferrer in traffic would say if some of the outdoor dining would be on city streets, and with winter and snow, do we want to have that? How can we have somebody who maybe has a larger lot who can have something like a bubble? And what about the restaurant that doesn't have, are they not allowed to have it on the street? I think that's all up for discussion. I think it's up for discussion. And it depends on how the council would vote on that ordinance when it's drafted. I understand what you're saying, but, that's why we have to come up with an ordinance that would seem equitable to the area businesses that we have in the community. With that, I yield.
Council Dion?
Yeah, through the chair to the city clerk. Do any of these changes have to go before the licensing board, or are these permits outside of their purview? Because I don't know, I could be wrong, but I believe just because somebody can get a permit for outdoor dining does not mean that their liquor license can be outdoors unless that part goes through the licensing board. Would that be correct?
Yes, I believe they also need to address the licensing board and have their approval prior to commencing with outdoor dining.
So
This
do
is
you
simply
think,
I think this would come after they've already received that licensing board approval.
so theoretically speaking, this would be extra actions for the licensing board, not something that they're presently doing, correct?
The
Changing this,
Yeah, the licensing board typically is not involved in this part of the process, I guess, because it's the structure on a public way that the council is permitting and with the approval of the appropriate department heads. So that part of it doesn't require licensing board approval, but they do need to approve the restaurant and the serving of food outside of the establishment.
also,
Could
I
I,
did,
Chairman, could I just make put a question? Now that I'm thinking about it, this seasonal aspect of it, having outdoor dining only between certain months, as Corporation Council was talking about, isn't that a parameter that originated with the state as far as liquor licensing? I'm trying to, maybe Corporation Council knows, but there is something at the state level that impacts on when you can do certain things outside that maybe supersedes what we could do down here. Personally, I'd like to have outdoor dining 12 months of the year. Anybody can do it, that's good for them. But I think we may be limited by state law.
Council Dion?
so I was just going to actually say that I recently had a discussion with somebody on the licensing board questioning some of this. And basically what they told me was the outdoor dining with the liquor, this past year was an exception because of COVID. And Mr. Kenny is 100% correct, because the governor allowed for it to happen is why we were able to do it. So that is correct. So I said, is it possible for an establishment to put in for a seasonal license for liquor? And the response was, why would they bother doing that? Because what they can do is they can change the footprint of their establishment to include the outside, like, for instance, a couple of our waterfront restaurants have. Their license is year-round, all the time, don't need special permission, because the footing is included, the outside is included. So the license covers the entire area, where most of our establishments, it only covers indoors. So if somebody wants to change the footprint, go through the planning department, go through the licensing board, etc., they can do that. They can get the approval, and then they never have to worry about outdoor dining in that case with all those approvals. So that's kind of the long and short answer to that. So with that, I yield.
Yield.
Yeah.
Council Kadim?
Thank you. So I was just going to say that Council Dion's right. It's the floor plan for the serving of the alcohol, but I think you would still have to come back before the council if it's a structure over, a sidewalk, right? So, for instance, you've got restaurants who have their own, obviously either in the parking lot or whatever the case may be, they can extend their footprint to outdoor dining. But where you've got 19 Prime 19 or Tapas, whatever the actual name of that restaurant is across the way from Government Center, they're on a sidewalk, right? So we would still have to approve it at that point, but that still doesn't mean that they'd be able to operate without having the liquor licenses and the Board of Health agreeing to allow them to serve outside. So, and then what I was going to discuss was, because I tend to agree with Councilor Pereira, and I see Corporation Council's input as to whether or not we want to limit it. I think maybe to find a balance, because I think at some point you want to have a limit, especially on some of these sidewalks, especially when we get into potentially some hazardous weather, when the snow and things like that. You don't want to have structures on a sidewalk where people are now forced to walk in the street, right? Or it's more narrow than we anticipated because of snow. So maybe we can draft some language that would allow us to have it specifically identified for certain months, and then for those times where it is unseasonal, or if there's looking for an exception, that they have the ability to go through the mayor's office for maybe a 2-month or a 3-month extension based off of that window, so that they can have somewhat of a extension for the warmer weather. With that,
Is there anything further from the council?
I just think,
Council Pereira?
I just think that we're asking Attorney Rumsey to come up with an ordinance with specific things that we're not being real specific about, that we would need to get the police department, the fire department, because if you're talking about a structure overway, it doesn't necessarily mean a banner. But when we did this outdoor dining, at first we were told that you couldn't have those pop-up tents, that you needed to have umbrellas only. And then in talking to the chief, who's not here now, but in talking to the chief, restaurants could have a pop-up tent as long as they had a certain code on them. And maybe this needs to be referred to, maybe administration needs to look at this and put the players together as, the city planner, Mr. Kenny, Mrs. Ferrera, the chief of police, fire, building, whatever, and look at what are the parameters first, and then we can give Attorney Rumsey, this is what we're looking for in this ordinance. I don't know, Attorney Rumsey, if you feel comfortable writing an ordinance with kind of the discussions that we've had here and some uncertainties, if you could do that, and then we can tweak it, maybe that'll work. But I just think that we need a little more information on what is it that we exactly want. To have licensing there, as Councilor Dion spoke about. I don't know if you or Mr. Kenny would add to this, or Mrs. Sahadi, but I just think we're giving him something to do and not giving a whole lot of direction on it. That's just my thought.
Madam Clerk, who was at this meeting?
I believe Laura was at the meeting, Mrs. Ferrera was at the meeting, I was at the meeting. The building inspector, because he has a role as well. And the police, Detective Cordero from the police department.
So licensing wasn't there, fire department
Because
wasn't there.
the part that we had discussed
Right.
at the time did not extend to this, to the level of outdoor dining specifically. It was more for the structures themselves.
Right, and I think now we're going a little bit more towards, the outdoor dining and structures and all
Mhm.
that. I don't know, I just think that maybe there needs to be a group that gets together, whether it's with the city clerk or city planner or traffic, through administration, put the players together on what would work. And then Attorney Rumsey can write an ordinance, but I just think you're giving him a blank piece of paper and saying, write an ordinance and here's some of the things we're interested in. I yield, Madam.
You, Councilor Dion?
Yeah, so that just sparked another thought. So do you think perhaps, and this would go to the clerk, do you think perhaps what we should send to Attorney Rumsey was the original intent of what was sent to us, and then perhaps have a separate ordinance drafted that would encompass the outdoor dining, the liquor licenses, et cetera, so that they're two separate issues instead of trying to bundle everything into one and making it too complicated?
Who you're addressing that to, Counselor?
The city clerk. And to Attorney Rumsey, since he has a big part in this.
I would think that the outdoor dining portion of it, it's not totally unrelated, but it is a whole different animal. So that probably should be addressed within a separate ordinance. In different parties at the table as well, you know, as far as licensing board, Attorney Rumsey, Mr. Kenny. So I think those, you know, they would all need to have a seat at the table, and because I'm not involved at all with the licensing piece, I just, you know, I just understand that they do have their own approval process, and I know that the police department is involved. I know that, I believe that the building inspector is involved. I'm not involved. Like I said, this is only for the structures, which is an annual permit of $15. It's not, you know, it's not a major,
Yeah, I feel
not as
like,
in-depth as that.
I feel like we've gotten far more in depth, and it's become much more complicated than it originally was presented. So that's why I was thinking maybe it would be better to do it in two separate ordinances so that each could be clear and defined in its own capacity. Attorney Rumsey, are you still with us?
I'm here.
So how do you feel about that?
I know when COVID happened, I know the administration and the city council, everybody was trying to help the restaurant stay open, get outside and stay open as long as they could. And I think the building inspector was heavily involved in trying to coordinate everybody. And logistically, it seemed like the most difficulty was getting city council approval. Not that you wouldn't give it, it was just, it took more time to get it before a committee to get voted upon. And, you know, I think, so that's part of the process too. I think it's easier sometimes to have the building inspector or the liquor licensing board sign off on something. And it just takes more time to get the city council to sign off on something. I know that was one of the major concerns everybody's having.
Do you think it would make sense to do these as two separate ordinances rather than trying to lump everything into one with all the difficulties and differences?
Probably so. They are completely different. I know when I first started reading it, I was thinking in my head, we're talking about banners and awnings. And then all of a sudden I realized this really had nothing to do with banners and awnings. We're talking about tables and chairs. So, I mean, I understand it. I can look at it a little more with that viewpoint and try to figure out whether it makes sense to separate or not. I'm not sure I have an opinion right now, but it makes sense in my head to separate it, but legally, I'm not real sure just yet.
Thank you. I don't know if we should make some kind of a motion to that effect, but for now I'll yield.
Clerk, we have a motion on the floor, correct?
Yes.
To send a letter to table and committee?
There was a motion made by Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Dion, to send a letter to Corporation Counsel requesting that he review the proposed ordinance and make any updates and return it back to the committee, and that the item be tabled in committee.
Councilor Kadim?
Thank you. I just feel like oftentimes I'll tell department heads, you know, after I tell them, yes, we can do something, and they continue to talk. And I said, don't talk yourself out of a yes. You know, let's just stop while we're ahead. I think we're confusing. The more we talk, we're just kind of convoluting everything, and it's just making it more confusing. I think it's really simple. It doesn't need to be this difficult. I think the ordinance that needs to be set, it's clearly defined that we're trying to establish something so that the city council has approval for structures over a way. Getting the licensing board and the Board of Health all involved, they already have their approval process. So all the ordinance needs to say is that prior to coming before us for these types of outdoor dining structures, you need to have your approvals in place from the Board of Health, the building inspector, and licensing in order to come to the council for us to give a final approval for tables, chairs, awnings, fire lamps, whatever the case may be. I think that's really the simplicity of it. I think if we just take the banners, make that, even if it's just a subsection of the ordinance, clearly define it and pull it out and have it be its own ordinance. And then let's focus in on the structures over a public way for outdoor dining and anything else that would incorporate that, and really target that as, okay, here's your yearly approval, and whether or not we want it for the full year or mid-year. I mean, I think those are the conversations that we should have once we see a draft. I think council can kind of put in a placeholder for those items, and we can really kind of debate whether or not we want to, make it for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. But I think overall, just the concept is just kind of structuring it in a way that this is what we're going to do, but you have to have all your pre-approvals before you come to the council. That's it. So it's a last step. Yeah.
Council Pereira?
I agree with some of what Council Kadim said relative to this particular item. But I don't agree with the fact that everybody has in different departments some procedure on what to do with outdoor dining. We have nothing in ordinance at all that talks to what the rules and regulations are for outdoor dining. There is nothing in our ordinances that speak to that, because it never happened before. People would get a 1 day to have outdoor dining in a certain area. So that is something that the ordinance committee should also be look at drafting, because everyone is different depending on where you are, what location, what you can have here and there. And there's got to be more conformed rules for everybody, for space or what have you. And we don't have any ordinances on that. So just to say, everybody has their certain permits or licenses that they can give every department, there's nothing in ordinances that speaks to that. You want to send this one right now to Attorney Rumsey and table, I have no problem with that. But I think that, a resolution should be filed to go to the ordinance committee to look at what are we doing with outdoor dining and what are our regulations going to be, particularly about that, because there is nothing in ordinance. With that, I yield.
Anything further?
No.
Madam Clerk, with the motion on the table?
Roll call on the motion. You good with the motion to send a letter to Corporation Council reviewing any edits on the proposed ordinance and table the matter in council?
Yes.
In committee, I'm sorry.
Yes. That's fine.
On the motion, Council Kadim,
Yes.
Council Dion,
Yes.
Council Lee,
Yes.
Council Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty Laveau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 7 is a resolution to develop a strategy to allow continuous operation of the city council through telecommunications or other forms of technology during times of emergency. This was submitted by Councilor Lee back in April. Councilor Lee?
So about 10 months ago or so, and I remember myself, and I believe it was Council Pereira, she can correct me if I'm wrong, we're expressing verbally that even though we were in this pandemic situation and we were still trying to figure out what to do as a city overall as to how we were going to conduct business, I felt as though, being the year 2020, we had the technology to continue to carry out our duties as city councilors. Just around the time that I wrote this, I believe the school committee was also organizing to have Zoom meetings as well. And I just felt as though, yes, the pandemic was unprecedented as far as how it affected our city. And I know that there was a transitional period. We've had about 10 months now since I wrote this resolution, to kind of, find a good rhythm with FRGTV and email and things like that to set up our scheduling through Zoom if we need to. I don't believe coronavirus is going to be here forever. I believe we will, or at least city councilors in the future will definitely be in their council chambers again. However, if we ever do have this type of an emergency again, I'm hoping that we can develop an infrastructure in place that allows us to make a smooth transition to some type of technological communication to be able to continue our work as city councilors. We have jobs to do. And I know that other boards and other committees would like to as well continue their work in this capacity as well. So if we have something, and maybe we don't need it, but I think maybe it would be smart for us to have some type of standard operating procedure in place that allows us to transition without any hitch when the time calls for it. And with that, I yield.
I actually have a question. I had spoke to the clerk about this a few weeks back. When we go to schedule a meeting, we only have one Zoom account. So the clerk's office has a schedule, and every committee that in government has to get on this schedule for one Zoom account. And when I had asked the clerk, because other cities and towns have multiple Zoom accounts, so they're able to have multiple meetings at the same time. They had indicated it was because it needed to be live on FRG TV. However, when we were in council chambers, there was often meetings in the hearing room or school committee at a different school or some other meetings going on. So how is it, and the response that I got from the clerk's office was because people were able to attend those other meetings in person if they wanted to. But how are other cities and towns able to have multiple Zoom accounts and meetings of different boards on the same evening? And we're not able to do that. If you're trying to schedule a meeting now and it's not a set schedule, you know, the third Thursday of every month, like some of the boards are a set schedule, and we're trying to schedule a subcommittee meeting, the calendar's booked out, you know, weeks in advance, which just really slows everything down. And it has to be something that a way we can do this better.
Okay, I assume that's directed towards FRG TV, and I want to thank the committee for inviting me tonight. Yeah, I mean, it really becomes a few different issues for us. I mean, having multiple Zoom accounts or an additional Zoom account isn't really the issue from what we see. We're more concerned, I guess, from the legal perspective of allowing people access to those meetings. So if we have, you know, a meeting on FRG TV that's accessible, everybody can watch it. That's not necessarily an issue, but if we have other meetings at the same time, they're either videotaped or just broadcast on Facebook. And I think, you know, really what we're looking for, I think what would be great is if there's some clarification in terms of what's allowable under open meeting law. Are we allowed to, if we have one meeting on GTV on channel 18, are we allowed to broadcast on Facebook, which we have the technology to do, a second, you know, meeting? Will we incur open meeting law complaints? And Alex is on, he administers all of these meetings for you guys on Zoom. He's the Zoom expert when it comes to this stuff. In terms of, you know, setting up a second Zoom account, that's really not the issue. We could do that. We do need some more equipment to do that. You know, it's cost and labor intensive on our end. And I think, you know, during, you know, when the pandemic first began, we really had to pivot like all our resources towards covering not only the city meetings, but also the school department meetings too. So that's kind of the reason why the schedule fills up. You know, we tend to, you know, when we were broadcasting the meetings and allowing people access, and some boards actually do allow the public in. So then we're not facing, with those boards, they're not facing any open meeting law issues whatsoever. It really becomes the issue is, and maybe this is clarification we can get from either Corporation Counsel or from the AG's office, is if we do have multiple meetings going on at once, you know, what's the criteria for the open meeting law, you know, structure? Is it allowable to just broadcast that second meeting on Facebook? If it is, then that's fine. Then we don't have an issue, and you know, we can schedule, you know, council meetings at will. I mean, provided that, you know, we have the staff and the equipment to pull it off. So
What would you do if, when we were in chamber and there was something going on in the hearing room and maybe a school committee meeting at the same time? Who got broadcast? Which meetings got
okay, so
broadcast?
school committee was a little bit different because the school committee meetings air on the educational channel. So
Okay.
we could air both of those meetings simultaneously. If there was a meeting downstairs in the hearing room or, you know, in another location, those meetings
To the public.
most always got videotaped and then rebroadcast. Council has always taken the front seat, so to speak, in terms of airing on Channel 18.
So I mean, I would assume this is taped, correct? The Zoom meetings are taped?
This particular Zoom meeting is not only taped, but currently is airing on Channel 18 on cable.
So if we were able to tape the meetings before, like a meeting in a hearing room, and, you know, rebroadcast it, why wouldn't we be able to do that with Zoom meetings?
Because people could attend those meetings.
Corporation Counsel, is that something that you can find out? Well, so, actually, hold on a second. Council Kadim, you have how many
Yeah.
in Peacock?
Can I just a point of clarification. So I think and I hear what Renee is saying. So I think the clarifying point, and it's an important point, is that nothing has technically changed in terms of the open meeting law. So the only thing that we have to do, because there's no requirement to actually have it televised. So the only thing we need to do is provide access. And the way we provide access is through the Zoom link. So that is the only requirement that we have through the open meeting laws, to make sure that when we have agendas that are out, as long as we are giving the public the access to have a link to Zoom, we have fulfilled the obligation under the open meeting law. And early on, they were saying that if we didn't have the ability to do the Zoom link, the alternative was that you had to have the minutes published on a website by the very next day. So that's the thing. But so what we can do, to your point, Renee, is you can still have multiple, Zoom links and multiple meetings going at the same time. Have people obviously doing it through Facebook. So if people do want to watch it, or they still have access to actually go onto a Zoom link, they have that ability to do it, and then we can always replay it because it's recorded. Figure out a way to get it replayed. So that I don't think anything changes. So as long as we have the Zoom link on the agendas, and we're allowing people who want to go on the Zoom meeting the access to do that, that's the best. That's all we really need to do. So I think by adding more, obviously more Zoom accounts, we have the ability to have more meetings at the same time. Now it just comes back to, as you had mentioned, who gets the priority to actually be broadcast live on FRGTV. So, and I would assume that the priority would still be the same: city council, school committee meetings, things of that nature. Obviously the two different channels, but I think that's where we would go. The only other thing that I would make a suggestion to is we probably look into the Zoom webinar, because I think that gives us a little bit more control in terms of an audience, because the Zoom webinar allows us to have attendees, but they can't speak during a meeting unless the host has given them the access. So we can have up to 500 people as attendees. And then, like for a city council meeting, all the city councilors would be considered panelists. And then Cliff, as the president, would have the ability as the co-host to take the attendees and have them come over when it's appropriate for them to speak, either during citizen input or if they're there to speak on a particular matter. The only difference, though, is when you do the webinar, any of the attendees, they don't have the ability to share video. So it would only be the panelists. So, for example, if Mary was there, we could obviously make Mary a panelist because she's always going through. But let's just say the fire chief was on for one issue and he was just coming in as an attendee. When we push them over, he would not have video. We would have the audio on them. That's all. But it allows us to make sure that nobody's Zoom bombing us and talking when they're during the meetings. So I think that's something we should also look into. With that, I yield.
Yeah, from what I understand, the webinar Zoom account is about $400 a year to sign up for. And the Zoom account that we currently use for council, I think is around $150 per year. And that just really allows us to, allows people to call in on their phones. It has some features that are specific to this Zoom account.
And Renee, I won't say this too loud. It would just be to you. The CARES Act money actually covers this. I'm just throwing that out there.
Gotcha. It's not a huge expense, and I think for where we're at, especially with not knowing what the future holds. I mean, we like I said at the beginning, we really pivoted our resources to kind of do this as seamlessly as possible. And, kudos to Alex down there who really, has taken this under his wing and really tackled everything that has come up in terms of the technical aspects and really just juggling everything that needed to be done. And I mean, he's covering all of the meetings for us and administering them. So.
Field Counselor?
I just wanted to just give Mr. Cockman my sentiments how well the transition did occur once we decided to do this. FRG TV has just done a great job. Fred TV has done a great job. And, even if this is where we are and this is where it stays, I don't have a problem with that at all. I just remember, and I know I'm pretty sure the councils remember that period there where we didn't know what was going on yet. We didn't know what was happening yet. And I just don't want to, I want to make sure that we have some type of structure in place in the future that we can transition right to it if we need to, even if we have to spread it out more to meet open meeting laws and make sure we accommodate the multiple different, groups that use Zoom, that need to use Zoom in that moment. I do think that it would be to our best benefit to have something solid in place for the future that may not even affect us ever again. But the future, we don't know what it holds. So that I yield.
Anything further? Will the council, do we want to table this and hear back from FRG TV on what they possibly come up with, or?
I'll make that motion.
Motion to table made by Councilor Lee. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Kadim. Madam Clerk?
On the motion to table the resolution, Councilor Kadim,
Yes.
Councilor Dion,
Yes.
Councilor Lee,
Yes.
Councilor Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Item 8. It's a resolution to discuss ordinances relating to the site plan review. This was adopted in February of 2020. We have Mr. Kinney here with us. I know he's been in front of full council before as well, but we also had this in ordinance. And I co-sponsored this resolution with Councilor Pereira. Councilor Pereira, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that Mr. Kenny is here. However, I think that doing this site plan review, the people that sign off on the site plan review are, the city planner, the city engineer, the building inspector, conservation, historic, and preservation. When we sold the police station, there was, they were offended and rightfully so, that they're not part of things that go on in the city like this. The site plan review, the way it comes in now, and I was involved in putting it together a few years back, but the way it comes in now is it comes via computer, and then every department head will look at the plan at that particular time when they have time, and then bring it forward. That's not the intent of what I felt the site plan review was going to be. If you could get all the parties at the table together, one day a month or twice a month, to come together and review the plan. And then whoever is presenting this plan, they know exactly what they have to do when they leave that meeting. And what I hear from people is, you go to City Hall, I have to go to this department, go to that department, go upstairs, come downstairs. I just don't think it's a cohesive system that we have. And I think that all the players should be at the table to talk about the site plan review and how it should work. We now have a city engineer, so I think he should be part of it. And I really think, conservation's a big part. If conservation had been at the table when they did the Whitefield, Dickinson, when they were looking at that type of thing, then you would have known that there were going to be issues there, or, other plans that we've had. I just think that it needs to be people coming together and coming up with a plan. I feel bad. I mean, Mr. Kenny has said to us clearly that he needs assistance in his department. You know, when I look at New Bedford has, 4 planners, 6 attorneys, not all full-time, but part-time. We need to do better for our constituents in Fall River, but we also need more people to get the work done. And I feel bad that, we can't afford that. That's something I think we need to look at, filling vacancies, et cetera. But I mean, I'll listen to what Mr. Kenny has to say. I just think everybody should be together. I don't know who was invited or who wasn't, but we've got to get all the players to see what everybody's feeling from their end on what's working, what's not working. They had put together that every time you have a site plan, that you have to have green space. And that's not being done. You're supposed to plant a tree. That's not being done. So we come up with rules and then things are never followed through. With that, I yield to Mr. Kenny.
Mr. Kinney, one that was put together that Council Pereira was a part of, were you a part of that?
No, that was before my time.
Okay, so can you just give us an overview of what the site plan review is now?
Yep, absolutely. By the way, that was ordinance 2015-11, so I didn't show up until 2017. The way that this ordinance, well, let me first say, you have 2 issues to deal with here generally. Number one, and probably the foremost issue is so many of our agencies and departments are grossly understaffed that we miss the opportunity time after time after time to take the initiative to revamp ordinances, to take proactive steps to make things work better in the city. And you're going to have to face the fact sooner than later, I hope, that you have to staff up all of these departments to where they ought to be. And Councilor Pereira talks about New Bedford. She's absolutely right. In New Bedford, and I'm not going to belabor the point because that's not what you really want to hear about tonight. You want to talk about the details of this ordinance. But you've got, as she said, 4 or 5 professional planners plus staff in New Bedford. You've got conservation handled in a separate department with 3 people. I have to do conservation. You've got historic commission handled by a separate department over there, 2 or 3 people over there. I have to handle that. So site plan review, they have a separate structure for that. It's apples and oranges, and that's why they're light years ahead of us on a lot of these issues. But getting back to this particular ordinance, 2015, it went into effect. You mentioned Whitefield. I believe that was a situation that happened before this went into effect. But this ordinance was enacted, it was drafted, I think, with a lot of participation by Department of Public Utilities. And one of the main thrusts of the ordinance has to do with drainage and issues related to drainage. The intent of the statute, the first paragraph, talks about site plan review to provide a framework, and I'll read you some of this, for a coordinated review of design elements contained in an applicant's construction or development project that may have impacts on the environment, the local economy, and or the character of surrounding neighborhoods. Site plan review process improves communication with the applicant, enhances project design and compliance with applicable laws and regulations, and reduces potentially negative impacts on the city. Then it goes on, and almost the entire rest of it talks about drainage and stormwater control. So even though the intent paragraph is specific in talking about impacts on the environment, the economy, and the character of neighborhoods, there's no teeth in this ordinance that let us deal with those issues. In other cities, they have similar intent, but they go on in great detail to specify how things like real site plan issues, not just drainage, which is a site plan issue, but issues more in terms of plantings, landscaping, site plan issues that have a lot more to do with other adverse effects on neighborhoods that can occur. So it needs to be enhanced from that point of view. A lot of cities have site plan review processes that are actually involved with public hearings. The neighbors that are going to be affected by these things are invited when this proposal is brought forward to the members of the committee and they have public input. And I think in a lot of situations that can result in much better final decisions. The people that are involved on this committee are planning, engineering, public utilities, which is water and sewer, engineering. And so there's 5. Did I count 5? Yeah. So I think the councilor mentioned historical was involved. They're not part of the ordinance, but we look out for them because we're in the planning department into this. The procedures by which we do this, she mentioned that's mainly by email. For some of the projects, it's a lot easier for us to just distribute to the 5 members. They compile the comments, we send them to the developer, and then they make some tweaks. And if they don't, then we, that's a good question. What if they don't like the tweaks that we want them to make? This ordinance has a fatal defect. There's no appeal period. There's no appeal process. It basically says if, the plan comes in, we don't like it, we tell the developer we don't like it. And then it says basically, well, we'll meet again. And how long are you going to meet? There's no end to the game. There's no process to appeal. In other communities, there is an appeal. And I believe you'll find that some of them say ultimately, maybe the city council makes a judgment if the developer and the committee can't come to terms on a proper site plan. The application for this process, again, is heavily weighted towards just drainage and stormwater issues. It does not solicit from the parties a lot of information about landscaping or aesthetics or impacts other than drainage and stormwater. And there are a lot of impacts that could be taken into account. When I was here in my first tour of duty here, I actually spent a very large chunk of time redrafting the ordinance and some regulations that would make it possible for the development community to know what was expected of them and to know where we were headed and what we were interested in seeing them do. And I would say maybe I got about a third or so through that and compiled a lot of research from other towns where they have much more robust site plan processes. And when the administration found out that I was working on this, I was told to stop. And you can read into that what you may, but we're not going to go back and revisit that situation. My advice is that somebody should take a look at this ordinance, rewrite it, develop some really specific regulations so the people who have to administer this know the extent of their authority, so that developers who want to submit a site plan will know what's expected of them and what's likely to work and what's not going to work. And there should be an appeal process if that process doesn't come to an agreement between the developer and the committee. And I think you should also seriously consider having a public input portion of this, like so many other communities do. I would love to be able to work on that. I don't have the time. If I'm going to maintain our day-to-day work, it's very difficult to work on a process like this. There's a lot of work involved in putting this together. The good news is there is a possible source of funding for a planning grant that we're aware of that Jane DiBiasio has told me about. And we could, if the administration wants to go forward with it, and I'm going to make the proposal, we could apply for a grant, have a consultant hired to review this whole site plan review ordinance, to draft some regulations, to look at what other communities have done, and to come up with a good proposal. And I really think if you want to move on this, and again, this is something that I tried to move forward a couple of years ago and didn't get anywhere. I think that's the quickest way to get at it. I think it would be money well spent, and it would result in a lot better site planning and a lot better participation by neighbors if you want to go with a public hearing process. And I just think that's my recommendation.
Mr. Kenny, the grant that you're talking about, do you know, can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's one of the, there's a new procedure that the state's just launching now called a one-stop for community growth, I think. And they're setting up an application process where you can file multiple applications and you don't even have to really pick necessarily which grant you're looking for. They have several grant opportunities, and they'll actually say, they'll come to the city and say, well, what do you want to do? And you say, well, we'd like, a planning study for this, or we would like some funds to build this. And you can just throw it up to them and they'll help you place it within which of their agencies might be likely to be a source for funds of the type that you're looking for. And this particular one is under a planning technical assistance grant. That's one of the cubby holes that you could fall into. And I think something like this would qualify for that very easily. So I'm going to be, working on that to recommend that the administration authorizes to go ahead and apply for that particular grant. And I think it would have a very good chance of being successful.
And without that grant, it's something that your department isn't able to do because you don't have the manpower? Is that
We don't have the manpower to do it now. Or the woman power.
Councilor Kadim?
Thank you. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why this is so difficult. I mean, we can go to Serped, ask Serped to give us, recommendations. We can go to the city of New Bedford, who already has all these plans, and say, hey, send us your draft, get it to legal. I mean, I don't know. There's a whole lot of time and energy that needs to go into this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. They're out there, right? So it really is probably a 10-minute conversation with Serped, a 10-minute conversation with New Bedford, if that's what we want to do, Taunton. I mean, I don't know that it takes a whole lot of time. I think this is a common sense approach. I think we should have done it a long time ago. So my only statement is let's move on it and get it done. I yield.
Mr. Kenny?
I'd like Councilor Kadim to spend a day with me and talk about how much time we have to do these things.
Thanks, Mr. Kenny. With all due respect, I'm fully aware of the time and energy associated with it. I don't disagree with you, but I'm well-versed on planning. I'm well-versed in conservation. I'm well-versed in building. I don't need to understand how much time it is. I've got to manage a town. Unfortunately, I have to wear a lot of the hats. I'm not just the town administrator. I wear multiple hats. So I get it. And I'm not suggesting it. What I don't appreciate is every time that we're having a conversation, I got to hear about staffing. I got to hear about, we need more of this. We need more of that. Fine. If that's what you need, present it to us. We don't need to hear it every single time that we need to talk about an issue. I'll support it. I agree with you. The city of Fall River should have a conservation department. No question about it. You shouldn't be handling that. But to say to get site plan reviews and all this other stuff is too much work and you don't have enough time to do it, to me is unacceptable. I wouldn't accept it if I was in the administration. I'm just telling you that right now, with all due respect.
With all due respect, the invitation stands.
Thank you. I deny the invitation, respectfully. I yield.
Mr. Kenny, can I just ask you a question? When you put all that stuff together under the last administration, did you have more staffing in your office?
Say again, I'm sorry.
When you put all of that stuff together under the last administration and they had told you to stop, was there more employees in your office? More staffing?
No, the staffing was about the same, but we had different projects going on at the time so that, let me rephrase that. We have many more projects in the works now than we did then. So I had some time available to work on that project at that time.
I'm sorry, Councilor Dion, did you have your hand up? Or Councilor Pereira, I'm sorry.
Mr. Kenny, all of the paperwork that you have from all of the research that you did before on this, do you still have that available or has that disappeared?
Gone.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
I mean, it's unfortunate that we're not able to do anything with site plan review or to go over this in any way, shape, or form if you don't have additional staff or unable to do so because you don't have additional staff and you maybe have more projects going on now. But I mean, to me, I think this is a priority. Councilor Kadim and I were on the phone on a conference call this morning with State Rep Viola about, things we could do at a state level to make it easier on municipalities. And if we don't have the time to even, put together our own site plan review, who are we to ask the state to, get a handle on theirs? I mean, Councilor Pereira, you were the lead on this.
I would say that with the site plan review, that we refer this through Mrs. Sahadi, say that this gets referred to the mayor's office. I think administration needs to figure out a way to get, to get this done. I think this is priority and to get this done. And I don't know if there are any colleges in the area where you have students who do internships who are going to being planner. I know that we have some individuals in the city who would probably love the opportunity to be able to work with Mr. Kenny, who are also planners. There are people out there who will help out. And I think administration, if we have to hire somebody to get involved, then we need to do that. We need to do that. But that would be, my motion would be to forward a letter to administration stating that, the site plan review needs to be dealt with, that Mr. Kenny doesn't have the time or the manpower in his office, and see what the mayor comes out with.
May I, Chairman, could I just say, Councilor Pereira and everybody else, the process is going forward. It's not, I don't want anybody to think that we're not doing site plan review. We're just working with an ordinance that, frankly, you can look at it from 2 points of view. Because it is somewhat vague in some respects, it makes it difficult for folks to know what may be expected of them when they present a plan. If it were more specific, it would be more helpful. And it's important, I think, for the government to make it clear to people what's expected of them and what's going to fly and what's not. On the other hand, the fact that it's a little vague can be seen as maybe giving the city a little more power to deal with folks. Because frankly, if we, for example, said we want everybody to plant a tree when they develop a lot, there's nothing in this ordinance that entitles us to do that on the face of it. You have to look into the general language that talks about impacts on the environment. And if you can make the argument that within that is authority to require trees be planted, well, you might make that argument. And the developer might say, where does it say you can do that? And the result is, since there's no appeal process in this, they can go to court. And as a reality, a lot of times, most of the time, rather than move an issue to litigation, they're likely to agree to do what you want them to do. So that's the ultimate clout that we have, even with an ordinance that's vague and even with regulations that are not comprehensive. We're doing many. You should, if you had the opportunity, you could talk to folks that were involved before this ordinance took effect, like in the folks in the DPU. With this ordinance, site plans are light years ahead of where they used to be. They could be even better. Things are moving forward. We're doing the work on the reviews that have to be done. Results are much better than they used to be, but they could still be better more than they are.
So
Well,
it doesn't,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Counselor, I'm sorry.
I mean, there are other communities that have ordinances set up and we can get them through the city clerk's office. We can call and get copies of ordinances from different locations. I'm more than willing to try to get all those ordinances, do some of the research, get everything together, sit down with you and then meet with Alan, with Attorney Rumsey to come up with, tighten it up. I'm willing to help out because I think it's something important. And I don't have a problem going into City Hall and helping out and doing what needs to be done. I mean, everybody needs to work together and I know things are tight for everybody, but I would offer my services to help out because I think in the long run, it's going to benefit the whole community. But my motion would be to, send this to administration for administration to know that we want this issue dealt with. With that, I yield.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Lee. Any discussion? So the only thing that Councilor Pereira, I think that if we are sending that to the administration, I think we need to stress the fact that it should be a priority. I understand that Mr. Kinney might be busy in his department, with plans that he's working on now, projects that are being worked on now. But if we don't have a proper site plan review in place, we're just going to continue to have problems down the road. I think the first thing to do would be to address the basic progress, the process and structure of our site plan review before we continue to do more projects under this old ordinance. It doesn't make sense to me to continue on an old ordinance and not make time to make the proper updates. I understand it might give the city some leverage in some way, shape, or form if somebody doesn't want to plant a tree or something else silly and they don't want to go to litigation, so they'll do it. But it's really not the right way that it should be done on any project. So I would just ask that letter, Madam Clerk, ask the administration to make this a priority. Madam Clerk?
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
Actually, Council Pereira, was it also to table it in committee?
No, I didn't say to table it because then I think if a new one comes in, we would just resubmit it to come down as a complete ordinance.
But we
Oh,
could
I-
send it back to the ordinance committee rather than sending it to the council and referring it, correct?
We could, it's a personal choice.
So I'd
Yeah.
rather table it so that we could have it on the agenda than having to go through the whole process again.
Yeah, we can do that. I think that there's a lot more to be done than just what this piece of this ordinance says, but we can add on to the ordinance. We have a starting point here. So I'm fine with that. So it would be to send a letter to the mayor, letting him know that site plan review, the ordinance committee views that as a priority. We'd like action on that and table this item in the ordinance committee. That would be the motion.
Madam Clerk, did you get that?
Yes, we will table the resolution in the ordinance committee, and I will send a letter to the administration requesting that a new proposed site plan review ordinance be worked on and have it be made a priority
Correct.
as quickly as possible.
Correct, yes.
Second, the amended motion.
Councilor Dion seconded the amendment.
So the amendment was to table?
To send the letter and then to table was the amendment, yes.
Okay, because at first we had a motion from Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Lee. But now you made the amendment.
To table as well.
Okay, okay.
What's the letter?
The roll call, Madam Clerk?
On the motion as amended, Councilor Kadim,
Yes.
Councilor Dion,
Yes.
Councilor Lee,
Yes.
Councilor Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kinney. Item 9 is a resolution. Consider combining the Historic Commission with the Fall River Historic District Commission. This was tabled April 3rd of 2019. At that meeting, it was sent to former Corporation Counsel Macy. Since then, I know that Kristen Olivera of both committees actually is spoken with Attorney Rumsey, and she is with us. Is she still with? She is still with us.
I'm here.
Attorney Rumsey is with us.
I'd make a motion to adopt. I think it makes a lot of sense to.
We need to take a motion to take it off the table. Do we?
Madam
Yes.
Clerk?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to lift?
Second,
Lift made by Council Pereira, seconded by Councilor Lee. All in favor? I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, roll call.
On the motion to lift the item from the table, Councilor Kadim,
Sorry, yes.
Councilor Dion,
Yes.
Councilor Lee,
yes.
Councilor Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
And I would make a motion to adopt. I think that both committees could be under one umbrella.
You're making a motion to adopt the resolution. Did you see what Corporation Counsel had sent to us earlier?
Yeah, it was to put both committees together. The historic, is that the one Steve Camara had filed out originally?
Yeah, that's a Steve Camaro one, yeah.
That
Yeah.
they both be added together.
But Corporation Counsel had worked on, there was 2 items that they had suggested. Corporation Counsel, is that correct?
That's correct. And I spoke with the Historic Commission. I guess the idea is they wanted Article 4, which carries much of the teeth of what the Historical Commission can do. They wanted to put that into Article 2, which is actually what is the Historical Commission article. So I've prepared a draft. I wouldn't call it much more than a rough draft as to doing that for them. You know, there are a lot of problems I found with the Article 4, which, as I said, is the teeth of all this. as it was written. So there had to be a lot of changes that I made. I mean, honestly, just unilaterally, because they just couldn't be there. An example would be, just so the committee understands, that the Historical Commission had the ability to file suit on behalf of the city of Fall River. I mean, that's problematic. That's contrary to other ordinances in, that's something that the Office of Corporation Counsel has. We have the final say on who can file suit on behalf of the city of Fall River. There's more work that can be done, but I guess my suggestion would simply be the Committee on Ordinances and/or the Historic Commission should take a review, maybe prepare some notes, what they think need to be added, deleted, changed. But I did at least take the first effort on it.
Thank you. My suggestion would be that Corporation Counsel works on this with the Historic Commission chair and then sends the suggestion back to the Ordinance Committee to be voted on. Because as a member of the Ordinance Committee, I'm not going to know what the Historic Commission wants to do or know what is allowable for them to do. That's going to be between the Commission and Corporation Counsel. Council Pereira?
But I would think that merging the two together, the Historic District and the Historic Commission, merging those together is the first step at getting everything else done, to merge them together as well. And that's something they've asked for quite a while. I think it would be beneficial. Maybe Kristen can speak to that, and if we can at least do that we're getting that en route.
I agree with you, Councilor. I spoke to Attorney Rumsey about this, and as he explained, one commission had all of the power, and that was the Historic District Commission. I believe they're just going to stay the Historic Commission. Is that correct, Mrs. Oliver? And
Yeah.
However, there are things that are currently in the ordinance that they really don't have the authority to do. So if he's going to be changing the ordinance to merge them, he should make it right at the same time.
Yeah, we really can't merge the two until we have the ordinance set, because the ordinance is what's going to put forth what our duties and responsibilities are going to be. So even though, the concept of merging, you can have that, but you really can't do it until Attorney Rumsey gets the ordinance in place so that we know exactly what we can and can't do. So that does have to be done first.
Just for I've done that. I've taken Article 4 and placed it in Article 2. I think what the committee was suggesting, which I think they're correct on, is that, I really shouldn't be sitting here just creating the Historic Commission the way I think it should be created. It's the commission. The commission's opinion is going to carry the day. It's what they want. And consulting with you, and I'm more than willing to consult with the Historical Commission to present some changes to the committee, but it's really not what I want. It's what the committee wants.
Councilor Pereira, you still have the floor.
Yes, but didn't Attorney Macy already make some changes on this? I thought that they were already made that I had gotten a copy of. Were those old? And I thought he had already done that. I'm sorry. I thought that was already done with Attorney Macy.
I've looked for it because I got an email that essentially said that the work had essentially been done. I looked all through my office. I couldn't find any. I spoke with the Historical Commission, and what their definition of the work was done was just an email saying combine the two. So if it's out there, I'm not aware of it. I'd love to have it, but at this point, it's almost too late anyway. I've already done the work.
I might have it on my computer. Maybe that's where I saw it. But it's probably obsolete by now if you've already done the work. But if I find it, I will share it with you, Attorney Rumsey. I thought that was already done with
We never knew anything about it. I had tried to contact Judge Macy a couple of times, didn't hear anything back. I had met with Judge Macy and Kathy Ann Viveris in May of 2019. And I had given him all of the paperwork that I had given to Attorney Rumsey. And I explained how we had wanted to do it because so the two commissions, they oversee two different things. The Historical Commission oversees the city, in general, oversees the structures and locations on the significant structure list, whereas the Historic District Commission just oversees the 49 properties in the 40C district. So what a lot of other places do is they have their Historical Commission act as the Historic District Commission and oversees everything, because it does get difficult to have two separate meetings. And I mean, a lot of the things fall under the same umbrella. So that's why we wanted to do it that way. So I had met with them and explained to Judge Macy why we had wanted, because the two ordinances are set up differently. The way that members are selected are done differently on the two commissions. So we had explained that we wanted everything basically to be the way that it's set up for the Historic District Commission in that way, but given the responsibilities of the Historical Commission. So he had said he was going to work on it right away. He wanted to get it to before the city council, before they had taken their summer break. I never heard anything back. I had contacted the office a couple of times, didn't hear anything back. And that's where it just stayed. So if he did anything on it, and we never got anything about it.
Right. Thank you. I yield, Madam Chair. I yield.
Anything further from the council?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would this expand, this would expand the body? Would you call it, would you change the name of the commission to just the Historical Commission? Would there no longer be a Highlands Local Historic District anymore?
No, there's still the district. The district is still going to be there. It's just, there isn't going to be a specific commission to oversee it. It's going to be the Historical Commission that oversees the district, which is what a lot of communities do. Instead of having two separate ones,
Yep.
because the things fall under the same umbrella, a lot of times it's easier to do it with one commission.
So there wouldn't be a structural change. It would just be a more uniform combination. And I'm not seeing a big problem here either, but so you're going to get this, we're going to adopt, I think we're going to adopt it to have this draft sent to you. Do you have, that's just me being ignorant to the process. Do you have legal representation that goes over this as well? Because we have our corporation counsel doing this, so I didn't know if you have.
No, we just use corporation counsel.
Okay. Yep, with that I yield.
Anything further? So what is the will of the council? I'm sorry, Council Dion?
That's okay. So I'm thinking at this point, I feel like we're at a starting point. So I don't know what type of a motion, I'm not really sure how we would do this, but essentially we probably need Mrs. Olivera to meet with corporate counsel the way she did with Judge Macy to give him what he's asked for, which is what their will is, as opposed to him applying what he thinks is the proper thing. So I guess at the same time, we'd table it so that they could meet, he could draft some type of ordinance and then bring it back to us so that we could pursue this and complete it.
I agree, Counselor.
So I don't know what type of a motion or how we would, I'll defer to the clerk.
Madam Clerk, if we want Corporation Counsel to work on this with the Historic Commission and table it in committee, do we need to officially send them a letter? How does that work?
We could do that. I could send Corporation Counsel a letter with that request, and again, table what we have in committee for further discussion.
Because obviously they've been waiting a long time for this. So I think the sooner the better. And if we go to that, at least that first step, we can complete the process for them. With that, I yield.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dion to send a letter to Corporation Counsel to work with the Historic Commission on the changes to the ordinance and table it in committee to come back here. Seconded by Councilor Pereira. Any more discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
On the motion to send a letter to Corporation Council and table the matter in committee, Council Kadim,
Yes.
Council Dion,
Yes.
Council Lee,
Yes.
Council Pereira,
Yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn made by Council Dion. Is there a second?
And
Seconded by Council Pereira. Madam Clerk?
On the motion to adjourn, Council Kadim,
Yes.
Council Dion,
Yes.
Council Lee,
Yes.
Council Pereira,
yes.
Chair La Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.